All right, guys. So it's been way too long since I've been on here, but I wanted to invite a special guest on, and it's a fight manager, specifically my fight manager, just to do a little bit of discussion on behind the scenes of what a fight manager does and how do you even get into managing fighters and what that all entails. And so I just wanted to pick his brain about some things, have a fun little conversation, and bring to you guys just behind the scenes of what a fight manager does. All right, so without further ado.
Without further ado, I have my own fight manager on here today. So I'm going to let him introduce who he is.
Okay, my name is Gary Brown, and yes, I manage Brittany Neiman, and I've managed several other fighters in the past. Currently, I assist and help out Danielle Wynn and help out Martina Kroll a little bit. She's doing more boxing now, professional boxing, than she is bare knuckle in the MMA. But when the opportunity presents itself, I help her out a little bit too. I previously managed Chelsea LaGrasse, and I previously managed Chantel Coates. They no longer are active in MMA. And so right now, you are the ladies that I work with.
So do you specifically work with more MMA fighters versus like jiu-jitsu, boxing, and other martial arts?
Anybody really that is interested in any sport. I mean, it really doesn't, I don't have a personal preference as far as helping people out. Really I don't. So the sport as, any sport, whether it's grappling, whether it's bare knuckle, or whether it's MMA per se, which is what I started with. So I don't have a preference. I know people in all aspects of it, and I'm just really glad to help. Again, this is not something I do for profit or anything like that. It's more or less just because I enjoy the sport. I have been around the sport since its infancy. So I just like being around it. I like being in the mix of things, and I'm glad to help where I can.
So I want to get in before we dive deeper into like the fight managing that you do. What do you do outside of fight managing? Because like you said, you don't do this for profit. So you have a family. So obviously you got to make some type of income. What do you do if you don't mind sharing?
Okay. Well, I've had the luxury and the benefit of having two separate careers. Initially, I started off in business. I graduated in 2006 in business administration, and I worked in the banking sector for a decade. Primarily loan origination, mortgage lending, consumer lending. I started off in the government lending section, the VA and FHA lending portion of it, then moved straight to the conventional in-house residential, selling to the secondary market and things like that. After about a decade of working in that field, and I started fairly young. I started when I was 19, before I graduated business school.
I was gonna say you still look young. You're talking about decades. You still look like you're in your 20s, Gary.
I am 50 years old, Brittany.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
I'm 50 years old. So
not that that's old for the 50-year-olds out there, which you look good.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And so after that, I left that industry in about 2004, and I was going back to school. My plan was to go back to school to get my MBA. And I said, well, I'll probably move out of this little small town that I live in, which is, I don't know if you've heard of it. Well, you have probably heard of it because you have probably received correspondence from me and things like that. But Natchitoches, Louisiana, it is a little small town in the northwest section of Louisiana. It's centralized between Shreveport to the north and Alexandria to the south. So nice little area. We're known primarily for the Christmas festival. Okay. That's primarily what we're known for. What I was going to do, like I said, I was going to go back to school to get my MBA. And as luck would have it, or as fate would have it, I should say, someone that had been a previous customer of mine worked in the school system. And they said, well, I heard that you left the bank. Why don't you give this a try? And I said, okay. So that was around about October of 2004. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And they said, just work until the end of school, which was May, and see how you like it. And then if you like it, you can continue on. So I was like, okay. No idea of working with children, no idea of any of that. Okay. And so I worked and finished the year out, and I enjoyed it. Actually, I worked as an adapted PE teacher and working with kids, and I traveled around to different schools. I even did some itinerant work. You know, the new guy, they always get you to do everything that they can get you to do to see if you like your job.
Right.
So they had me doing everything, and here I am gung-ho volunteering to do everything. So, you know, it seemed like a good marriage made in heaven right there. And so after the school year ended, I said, well, this is something I may give some thought to, and then I may continue on in. So I got into the alternative teacher education program. Now there's two versions of it. There is a quick version, which takes about 6 months to a year. And then there is a longer version, which takes 3 years. I purposely took the longer version, the 3-year version, because I was new to education. And I happen to be the type of person that if I'm involved in something or if I'm choosing something as a career, I need to know the insides and outs of it. And I need to be, I like to be a quality professional is what I like to be. So I went back to school. I got a master's degree in education. I also completed the alternative teacher education program, and I got my plus 30 in education. So
nice.
Went back, really immersed myself in it. Became certified as a special education teacher. I became certified as an adult education instructor. I became certified as a child search coordinator. And I became certified as what I am now as an educational diagnostician. Okay. And what that is a person who evaluates children to determine if they're gifted or if they have disabilities. And part of my job is basically coming up with a plan for how to solve the educational problems of children.
That's awesome.
Now that's part of my job. Now my other job, my the college portion of my educational career is I currently work in adult education, where I help adults get prepared for the workforce and help train them, help give them the skills that they need. I've actually worked at the college level for it's commensurate with my years in the public school system. So it's about almost 20 years in both. And I taught everything from special education courses to new teachers. I have taught developmental math, developmental English, and I currently work now in the adult education department at Central Louisiana Technical Community College in Alexandria. And what we do is we try to prepare students to get ready to complete their high set, which is the equivalent of a high school diploma. And we're preparing them not only for that, but for work beyond that. So that's my scope. That's my scope in education. And I also tutor math as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask because, you know, you said you said that you do this for free.
Yes.
But you have so much going on behind the scenes that it just shows that your heart is truly for the people in this sport. So that's the reason why I wanted to get in the background of that. So
Absolutely.
My next question, which I want to lead into, is how did you even get into this? Because I know how you started to manage me was we met through Coach, who is on YouTube.
Yes.
Coach Shelton Harrison. So shout out to him. We met through him, and both of you guys were so genuine, organic, how we came together. Like, I know God put that together. He was my first ever interview. after my first amateur fight. I didn't even think it was real. I thought he was like some scammer or something. He wrote me on Facebook and was like, I saw your first fight. I want to interview you. And I'm this little amateur fighter from Minnesota. Like, how did you find me? Why do you even care to interview me? And from there was like a relationship that built there. And then he introduced you to me and you became my fight manager. And even with you, you're like, I'm like, how much is this going to cost? What, you know what? And you're like, nothing. I just want to help you out. And I'm like, what? You know? So I just want to find out and let the people know, how did you even decide, hey, I want to manage a fighter or fighters?
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned, I started, I asked Chelsea LaGrasse, could I interview her? I used to do an interview segment on my page, Combat News. Okay. I no longer do that anymore, but I asked her if I could interview her. And at that time, I was trying to get started, and I would just ask or message various fighters, can I interview you? Can I send you these questions? Would you respond? And I'll post on my page. Okay. And so I asked her if I could interview her, and she said, yes, you could. And so she mentioned about her fight, and I just so happened I was watching a clip of it on YouTube after it had taken place. And I said, it was odd to me because I've always had a business mindset for everything. And I said, Chelsea, you don't have any sponsors. You came out with a black outfit, but there were no sponsors on it. I said, why is that? And she kind of mentioned and said, well, I really didn't have anybody to look or to help me with any sponsorships. I said, well, why don't you, would you allow me to work with you and see if I can help you get some sponsors? And she said, yeah. And that's kind of how it started. Wow. And so I started to just reach out to different MMA brands. And that's kind of how Dean Anderson and I got together with Knockout Canada, which it was Never Tap before, but then he switched the name to Knockout Canada. That's kind of how we got started. And Chelsea was one of the first people that I was able to get a sponsorship to. And, you know, we worked to get a number of sponsorships, she and I. And to me, it was just natural that a fighter who is putting in all this time, training, not only training, but raising a child, working full time, you have a career, someone needs to help you in that career. And someone needs to help you that doesn't have any ulterior motives.
Right.
Someone just to help you just because they would like to see your career progress and they would like to see just how far we can go with this.
Yeah.
Just how far as a fighter can you go? You know, can you make some monetary gains from the sponsorships that you have, which is the purpose of that? Or can they provide you with gear? And, you know, if we look back on it, you know, Chelsea can tell you that there are some things that work actually very well with she and I. Never Tap was her sponsor, I think, right up until her final MMA fight. Women of Combat provided her with some things. There are a number of other sponsorships that helped her. And, you know, that's really, for me, the satisfaction of it. Being able to help a fighter with nothing in return. You know, there are plenty of people in the sport who don't want anything in return, like Shelton Harrison, like myself. They just want to see, hey, I want you to be able to go out there and fight and not have to worry about anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you only manage women, or have you only managed women? And if so, is it easier, harder? What's behind that?
Well, I've only managed ladies. Yes. Now, actually, one of my former college students, Jesse Roberts, is a fighter, but he had his own camp, his own management crew. I give a shout out to Jesse every time or every podcast I'm on. I'm kind of doing it now indirectly, but you know, Jesse's a cool guy. For me, it just seemed like female fighters did not have the representation,
Mm,
have the sponsorship opportunities,
yeah.
Did not have the connections that they needed. And at some point, it's almost as if they were being taken advantage of, or to put, or getting selected for fights and being helping other fighters get over, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Fighters with that some promotions or regional promotions are given a push that they want to go to bigger organizations. So what will they? They'll pick a fighter who they feel like they can't beat their fighter, and they'll put them in the fight with them just to get them over. So a lot of those things I'm very leery of. You and I have talked about that.
Yes.
Not letting that happen,
Yep.
and just somebody to look out and say, okay, well, how much are you paying? Okay, I always ask for more for fighters, for professional fighters that are getting a purse. I'll ask for $100 more. Well, why can't they get that? Okay, okay. Well, can you give them this? And the whole reason for that is, travel needs to be paid for.
Right.
The hotel accommodations need to be paid for. All of that goes into the comfort of being successful on fight night.
Right.
You're not successful. The only way that you're successful in the cage is if you're successful in every avenue leading up to going in the cage.
Right.
Or otherwise, if you have crappy hotel accommodations, if you don't have the right weight cut accommodations, if you don't have the best flight, how are you going to succeed the night, the day, or the evening of?
Right.
I'm not going to do that.
Right. And honestly, after having you on like a part of my team that's outside of the cage, has definitely brought comfort to me, because I'll even say for my first fight after that, my husband and I had conversations and felt like you said, I was a little set up. And that's no, I don't want to, tarnish any relationship I have with that organization now, but I have to be honest with how I felt. And the fight, we both were amateur fighters. We didn't have a record. It was 0-0, but she was somebody who trained in this organization's gym. I was told that she was a striker and was very green. And I was very green too, but I had, about 2 years of jiu-jitsu and kind of doing Muay Thai here and there at the gym. And then, of course, the Taekwondo kind of freestyle that my dad had taught me. But I went in thinking I was going against a striker, and she immediately was trying to take me down the whole time, And so it just was like, now, again, maybe that was just her instinct. Maybe, they trained her to be a striker and she went out and just was like, I just want to take down. I don't know, but it felt a little funky. And so, after doing that, it was like, how do you trust these organizations going forward? Are you feeding me to somebody that is better than me, who's been training longer, but to have a fight manager that combs through all that, has those serious conversations. Like you said, all I got to focus on doing is being ready to get in that cage while you take care of making sure I get there, making sure I have a good place to sleep. I'm not pro yet, but when I am pro, am I getting paid what I deserve, and I'm not getting gypped, different things like that. Like, that is stress that after my first fight, I did not realize that I was like, I got to kind of rethink about all this stuff,
It's more than just getting in the cage and fighting. It is now, we work well together. We don't live in the same state.
No.
Okay. But we have open lines of communication, and we may not always agree on everything. Okay. But the team that trains you, the team that works with you behind the scenes, there needs to be a synergy between those two, because we're all on the same page. And you have to look at it as, is it sound to take certain fights, especially ones that you're not ready to take?
Yeah.
And you also have to be honest with the person.
Right.
I've never wanted to be a yes man to anybody that I work with. And I don't want to be a hype person to anybody I work with, because this is a real business. It's a real business to where people can get hurt if they're not properly trained, and
Right.
people can get hurt if they attempt to punch over their weight. And what I mean by that is if you attempt to take a fight that you're not ready for,
Mhm.
that's not the best thing to do. And there just needs to be honest conversations that need to be had. And that way, ultimately, it's the decision of the fighter if they want to take that fight or not. But I would be remiss if I didn't say, Brittany, I don't think you should take that fight.
Right.
Or Chelsea, I don't think you should take that fight. Or Chantel, I know you should take that fight.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're not doing this in the fight.
Yeah. Right.
And it's the honesty and the candor that really makes the relationship genuine.
Right. And that's one thing too that has, over the few years that we've worked together, has shown that you're not in this for the wrong reasons or waiting for me to blow up so you can be like, all right, when you can drop that bag my way. Is because I've been out for a while between pregnancies, between my ACL surgery recovery. You have been there the whole time. You've never like pushed me to, like you said, do anything that I didn't feel comfortable. And there's been times where I felt like I've let you down because I'm like, I really don't want to do that. It's hard for me as a mom to want to travel, job changes, all those things. You've always been behind my back, say, hey, if you don't want to take that, you're not ready. You will throw in like, your 2 cents to be like, hey, this would be a good idea, but you always leave it back at me. And so that's one thing that I've always enjoyed as having you personally as a fight manager is you always have my back. You always give me honest advice, but at the end of the day, you leave it to me to make my decisions. And even through the long seasons where I have not been as active as even I want to be or have been capable of being, you've still been there to say, when you are ready, though, here I am. Hey, I do have an option. Here's one. Do you want this one? Okay, we'll move on. Here's one. Oh, you want to take this one? Okay, let's figure out what we can do there. You've always been super open with me. You don't overhound me. It's not like I can't find you. Like I don't have to keep calling you and calling you. You're there. And we both have lives. I'm a wife, a mom of 3. I have a job. I'm a minister. I do other things too. But we still work very well together. And again, like don't always necessarily agree on what fights to take, or maybe I just don't feel ready. I'm in my own head, but you let me know. I feel like you could take this, but if you don't want to, or hey, if you want to get as big as you want to, you're gonna have to start traveling, which pushes on my uncomfortableness of not wanting to, but it's always been in a respectful way and we've always gotten along. So I've really, really appreciated that. So my next few questions to you is what is the easiest part of being a fight manager?
The easiest part is finding a fight. That in it of itself is not very difficult to do. There are tons of promotions. They are all looking for fighters. The problem, and not with you and I, but the problem with some fighters is they feel like myself and their camp are 2 separate entities. Whereas that's not functional.
No.
You have to be all on the same page. And it's like, oh, well, I have to ask and see if I can do this, or I have to ask and see if I can do that.
Yeah. Well,
if that were the case, then why isn't the gym trying to find fights?
Right.
Because if you got to ask permission,
right,
the fight is already found. You have the person to find you fights. All the gym has to do is train you. It shouldn't be an act of Congress, or, you shouldn't be afraid to go to someone who trains you and say, well, this is the person I work with. He's found me fights. He finds me sponsorships. Now, if he brings a fight to us, okay, work with him enough to know that he's not going to suggest anything foolish. I don't like to suggest anything foolish in my professional life. And this is an extension of my professional life. So I certainly don't like to express anything foolish to a fighter that I'm working with. Right. So that part of it sometimes causes a little consternation. I feel like it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
feel like that the gym should not be a cult.
Right.
The gym is there to do a job, which is to train you.
Yeah.
I don't feel like sometimes that the gyms do a good enough job of. I think that sometimes gyms take on too many fighters,
Mhm.
can't do every fighter justice,
Yeah.
because where's the film breakdown? Where is the specific training on certain areas?
Mhm.
You're training for an important fight. Let's say a fight within an organization. Let's just say you're fighting for Peak Fighting Championship.
Yeah.
Okay, with somebody we know, somebody that I've worked with in the past,
Yeah.
and you won several fights with them, and now you're moving up the ranks within the promotion
Yeah.
to a possible number one contenders fight or possible title fight.
Hmm.
Where is the specific training and breakdown of film that fighter needs in order to be successful in that fight?
Yeah.
There has to be some type of synergy, between the people you have representing you,
Yeah.
the people you have training you, and everything that's going on. Otherwise, it's dysfunctional.
Yeah.
I don't believe in, blindly leading somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, why would you do that?
Right.
So
Right.
that's one of the bigger issues that I've had to face. And I've said this a number of times. I'll say, hey, I'm not in this for the money.
Yeah.
I'm in to help. I'm to help the fighter. So,
Right.
for one, I want them to have gear that they need when they train or when they show up for a fight.
Mhm.
I feel like that's important. I
Yeah.
want them, to have all of the necessary accoutrements that they need when they arrive on fight day. That's why I've been on the phone, like in some cases, the day of.
Yeah.
Do they have this? Are they going to get picked up? All of that, because those are things that the fighter himself or herself should not have to worry about.
Right. So then that leads me to, what's the hardest part? Is that the hardest part, or is there a harder part of fight managing?
That part, for me, making the contacts, talking to promotions, talking to promoters, talking to sponsors, that's not an issue.
Yeah.
That's easy stuff, because people aren't difficult to negotiate with. They're
Yeah.
not. Okay. The problem is, I would say, in some cases, the fighter themselves. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you going to take this fight? Why on earth are you taking this fight?
Right.
Yeah. This person has undefeated and has X number of wins against these top opponents.
Yeah.
And those opponents have went on to fight in other organizations. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I can do this. Somebody told me I can do this. Who told you could do that? Nobody told you could do that.
Right.
Because that's not realistic at this point.
Right.
You look at a fight and you look at the competition that somebody has fought.
Mhm.
A lot that goes into it. You and I have talked about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is this person fought? What are their record? They could have a sparkling amateur record where they have had 10 to 15 amateur fights.
Yeah.
That person technically is a pro.
Yeah.
You step in the cage with that person is a pro. And depending on the camp that they belong to and the type of fighter that comes from that camp also says a lot to do with it, because they're training with those people.
Right.
If you're training with people from Legacy Fighting Alliance, from a Peak, from that fighting Peak Fighting Championship or American Combat Alliance, I mean, these people are fighting at a very high level.
Yeah.
They're very high level. LFA is a pipeline to the UFC.
Yep.
Peak Fighting Championship is a pipeline to bigger promotions. Maverick MMA, Waylon Clark, they're sending people to bigger promotions. So if you get in the cage with those people, you should be ready, as opposed to training with people who haven't fought or who have had lesser competition. A lot of that goes into play. And so really, to me, that's the hardest part, is getting the fighter to see, well, this may not be the best fight to take at this point in time. It may be later on down the road, but right now, and your record, well, the record of the fighter has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get to the point to where you have a losing record and then everyone starts to call you because they feel like, oh, well, this is an easy win on my fighter's record.
Right.
You don't want to get that stigma.
Right. So for future wannabe fight managers, or even like fight managers that are beginning, what advice would you give to them?
To not take on a bevy of fighters, because you can't do them all justice. You need to have a small group, build your reputation. You really need to garner some sage advice from people who have worked as helping with sponsorships, who have made contacts to promotions, because what sounds good may not always be good.
Yeah.
So you need to do your homework. And I will say this, look, I have been a fan of mixed martial arts. I've trained in mixed martial arts. I've been a fan for a long time. But the business can be very shady.
Yes.
It can be very, very shady. And you have to have people that understand that. And you also have to have people that have your best interests at heart.
Right.
If you, for instance, if you've been knocked out several times, well, then you need time off.
Yeah.
Why are you continuing to fight? Who's putting you right back in the cage?
Yeah.
Not even, it doesn't even make sense to do that. If you're on a losing streak, what's wrong? Something's wrong at the gym. Is somebody breaking film down? Who's in your corner? Who's training you? Because you don't want to get on a streak of perpetual losses, because that does something to your psyche as well.
Right.
So in that aspect, it can seem like, oh, it's very cool, I'm somebody's manager, but you have to understand that person's career is partially in your hands to a certain extent, and you want that person to succeed. You don't want that person to get hurt,
Right.
because there is a quality of life after fighting. Yeah, that you will not. I mean, fighting is not a business to where you will be in 15 or 20 years. Shouldn't be. No, shouldn't be.
Right.
No, at all. So you definitely want to know, honest discussions need to be had. Okay, well, when am I coming to the end of my career? How far can I go as a fighter? There's a lot of sacrifice that has to be made with that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Gary, I don't want to hold you much longer. I really appreciate your time. I'm definitely going to bring you back on for some more questions when it comes to being a fight manager behind the scenes. I'm going to want to do some breakdowns of my own fight with you and just hear your perspective, because as you can hear, being a fight manager, it's not just a business person that is behind the scenes. It's someone who has a love, one, for their fighter, two, a love for the sport and a knowledge of the sport. And that's everything that Gary has. And so I would love to not just hear your perspective on what fight managing is, but also just watching fights and watching that stuff, because there's been times where you've watched my fights and given me advice after my fights. So you don't just get me to the fight and then go to sleep and wait for me to tell you when I'm ready to fight again. You're actually involved in how I do. You're checking on me. How are you doing? If I've lost, you let me know, hey, we still love you. You're still supported. We'll hit them next time. It's not like, well, you lose another one, I don't know if I'm gonna be managing you much longer. Like, you are always one of the first people outside of like my family, my coaches, who are obviously immediately at the fights. You're always the first one in my inbox saying, hey, you did great. Or you know what? You'll get them next time. Keep pushing.
That's right. Because we're on the team together. And I will say this, you and I, we share the same issue, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the issue is, and it's for me when I run, because I'm a runner. So it's the same issue, and yours, it's our pace. The pace is way, and I've been running as long as I've been running. That is one thing I have never mastered, is my pace. It is through the roof in the beginning, and I just
absolutely. I'm a sprinter at heart. I did the 400 and below up until my senior year of high school. And I have not, like you said, my pace. And at first I thought it's my cardio tank. I need to work on my cardio. And people are like, no, you have a great cardio tank.
Yes.
You just blow it up and empty it too soon. And my nickname's the War Machine, but I forget that I'm not actually a machine. And even some machines break down. You run out of gas at some point, and you got to go back to the gas station and put gas in your car. But you can't do that in a fight. You can't be like, hey, opponent, give me like 2 rounds and I'll be back.
No, you can't do that.
You have to pace it out. So I have the war in me, and that's all good, but I'm trying to learn how to manage that machine. And you're absolutely right, is pace. But that's the honesty that even a fight manager outside of your coaches and your loved ones should be able to give you. And that's something that I've always enjoyed about you, is your honesty and being able to just, support me no matter what. So is there any last things that you would like to share at all until next time?
What I would like to say is, to everybody that I have worked with, every fighter, I've been grateful and very appreciative to work with you, to help you in your career. I'd like to thank Coach Shelton Harrison for bringing us together.
Yes.
He actually helped me and Chantel Coates get together. Coach Shelton Harrison is one of the best people in MMA that you can come across and meet.
Absolutely.
And he will do anything for you and your career that he can do. That guy is awesome. He's awesome. I'd like to thank Dean Anderson at Never Tap, now Knockout Canada. I'd like to thank Ian Pimper at Fighter Alias. I would like to thank Marion Renault. She, former UFC fighter. She and I have been friends from the get-go, since we first messaged each other. I'd like to thank Aaron Tohill. I'd like to thank John and Amber Bishop of American Combat Alliance. And my old student, Jesse Roberts, who is a professional MMA fighter. He's fought for Bellator, and I wish him the best of luck and hope for a speedy recovery for him.
All right. Well, thank you, Gary, for your time. And again, like I said, you will be another special guest on a different episode, and that should be soon. So thank you.
All right. Looking forward. Take care.
All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation with Gary and I, just talking about being a fight manager and what it takes to manage fighters. So with that, I want to leave you with this: pray without ceasing, nurture your family, and continue to train like a war machine.